Bob Geldof is a man that represents goodness and kindness and mischief and intelligence, all things that I rate very, very highly. Personally, I have enjoyed his creativity, curiosity and courage from the moment that he first boomed into our lives as the frontman of the Boomtown Rats over 50 years ago. Can you believe it? He is touring the country next year in his show, An Evening with Bob Geldof, or has it been renamed Life, WTF, whatever it's called. Get your tickets now at tegdainty.com. I am thrilled to welcome to the ChrissieCast
Thank
Sir
you.
Bob Geldof.
I'm mad.
I want to start with, I'm so desperate for you to like me.
Yep.
And
well, you'd arranged to sort of pretend you just got into the lift when I got in. I mean, it's kind of sad. You know,
I've been following you all morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Stalking me at the Melbourne Cup, you know.
I have, tried to research as much as I can, and I have found that I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I found the bigger the name, the more bullshit there is written about them
Absolutely,
on the internet.
Yeah.
So forgive me if I say something that you just say, this is not true. Breakfast. Do you judge somebody on their opinions about breakfast, if they have it or not?
On Brexit?
Yeah, breakfast.
Oh, I thought that's...
No, not Brexit. No, we're not. This is not going to get political.
Okay. Do you judge someone on their opinion on breakfast?
Yeah, I read that you're a breakfast aficionado.
No.
Oh, God.
I mean, it's coffee and that's it. Like, that's mad.
That was written about you. What about cups? Are you a cups guy?
What sort of cups?
Well, I read about you that you carry your own cup with you. Oh, my God.
What? That's completely nuts. Now, the thing about the web, which you must know, is that there's a version of the self that takes place in this other universe, and people chip in and add bits, and it becomes this It used to be the tabloid press, which had a version of you. It was your name, but you didn't recognise anything about yourself. It's the same with the web, which I've never looked at. Not a single time have I looked at any reference to myself. One, I'm not interested, but two, you just kind of go, okay, whatever. So
weirdest
cups
thing,
and breakfast, no.
Cups and breakfast. Well, I brought in cups for you.
Is it because in the UK I had a production company and we did the breakfast show for Channel 4 for 10 years called The Big Breakfast?
No.
And so maybe it's that. There's a story that I keep a cup. And it's the cup Mick Jagger drank coffee out of when my sister brought me to see the Rolling Stones in 1964. And I saw Mick, and he was drinking a cup of coffee, and I ducked in behind the commissionaire, who was the guy at the stage door for the cinema they were playing at. And I ran in behind him and grabbed the cup when Mick went to practice. I thought, I now know it's sound check. But and I grabbed it. So fast forward. And I want the Stones to play Live Aid. And I'm having breakfast with Mick Jagger at the Savoy Hotel in London, as you do. And Mick, it's probably pre his strict diet thing. It was 40 years ago. So Mick's having, classic bacon and eggs. It's English breakfast stuff. And so... obviously the Rolling Stones are a huge thing. Like, I saw the Beatles, I saw Bob Dylan in the same cinema in the same year, but it was the Rolling Stones. I just said, I'm going to be in that gang. That's it, So I'm saying to Mick, I still have the fan thing going on. It's odd to me that in my life I've got to know this guy, and he's not a mate, but we chat away, But I can't get rid of the fan filter no more than I could, say, with David Bowie or people I really admire. I can't get past that, but I can have a normal chat. But I'm all the time thinking, I'm this kid from Dudleary, County Dublin. I'm talking to David Bowie, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I say to Mick saying, I know, Stones, I can't do it, man, because I'm fighting with with Keith, So he was going to go to New York and put it together with Tina. And Keith, as soon as he heard this, he went off and rang Bob Dylan and said, can I play with you? So they had this whole thing going on. But I sort of say, here's the thing. And Mick says, what? And I said, I have this plastic cup that you drank coffee out of in 1964. And I said, I could never give that away. I'll never sell it. I said, what's that about? You know, and he said, I don't know, do you want my fucking bacon and eggs? You know? I said, no, I don't want your bacon and eggs. But that could be the breakfast and the cup.
It could be. Where is the cup right now?
In my attic.
And what does it look like?
Plastic. It's black with a white rim around the top. You remember those plastic sort of cups? And it still has a bit of dried froth on the inside.
Really?
Yeah, you'd think I'd have it mounted on something. No, but it's in with all the other crap, you know. I know it is, but it's not going anywhere.
If you were really fanning and being creepy, you could take it to a lab and reconstitute the coffee that was in it, like Dolly the sheep.
Reconstitute mixed DNA, because he's got a big mouth and he's probably, that lip stuff is all over the rim of that cup. And, you know.
That's another thing I read about you.
What?
That you grew up with a big set of lips and everybody was cruel to you about it, and then
cruel and it was heartbreaking.
Heartless. You're still not over it.
Yeah, I know.
And then Mick Jagger arrived and suddenly you were hot.
Yeah, well, I wasn't hot. I mean, it was awkward because, you know, boys as they're forming into men 11 to 15, 16, they're really crap, you know.
Yeah,
and,
I've got one at home, yeah.
Okay, so I was beyond crap, like, you know. And so, you know, my hair was a mess, my clothes were a mess, and there was no one to rectify that because my dad was off. He was a commercial salesman, so he was off selling towels around the countryside of Ireland. He'd leave on Monday, come back on Friday. My mum was dead, so there was no one there to, you know, iron or do washing, or I certainly wasn't going to go to the laundrette at the age of 9 or 10. Forget it. So, and then my hair was all over the place, so I was always kind of getting thrown out of school for deportment or lack thereof. And when girls sort of swam into view, it was, one, Catholic Ireland. There was no chance of anything ever happening. But two, quite correctly from their point of view, I was horrible, you know. My mouth was far too big. My ears were I looked like sort of King Charles at the age of 11. And my hair was a mess and my clothes were, you know, useless. So...
You've always spoken about yourself in this way, but you are a very attractive man. There must be...
Yeah, if you were 14 and I was 14, let's go back to it, you know. So the first time I actually did, a girl who said yes, she would dance with me, Anne Rice.
Anne Rice. What, the vampire rider?
No, not her, but, you know.
One.
So we went, you know, basically you got kind of a dance or two out of the girl before she sat down again. It was the days when girls lined up along one side of the room and you were down the other, and it was the Sunday afternoons, and
all of that stuff is just fresh hell to me.
So, you know, I asked her to dance and she said okay. By asking her to dance, it meant I sort of grunted at her and kicked her shin, which is an indication, you know. And they said, your next dance, please, a slow dance. And she stayed with me. So I thought, game on. And so, you know, I was trying to cop a feel and looking expectant. Remember, this is Ireland, and James Bond was banned in Ireland, you know, because there was always a sentence, her nipples were erect with desire. I had no, I couldn't possibly, I had no understanding of what that meant. I'd never seen a nude woman, you know. There just wasn't any in Ireland. They didn't ever go nude, in fact.
I've always imagined that it must be so exciting as a young man to see your first set of busies. Like that moment, you'd never forget it.
It's so vivid on a second by second basis. You are a laser pointed missile.
Yes.
I mean, there's just, you really are. And if nothing's happened, nature will take its own course, and it just, you know, naturally it's just and so I guess it was that. But as I was trying to, tune in whatever, cup of feel, I expected her to be sort of her head, swaying with ecstasy, etc. Because I'd read about this in my illegal James Bond book, and I looked down, and she was just there chewing gum, looking around, completely indifferent to me, as I pulled the Irish Times out of her brassiere, and I was reading that day's news from the chest of this young girl. That was my first experience of this. It wasn't good.
It would have been smudged too, the print.
Well,
old
with
school.
The sweat of my palms, definitely,
Can you remember what songs were around at that time?
Yeah, they were good. To put this in perspective, the bands that sometimes I heard were Van Morrison's band, them, who were just brilliant. Taste, which was Rory Gallagher's band. This got a bit older, so these were good. We knew they were good. The other bands were pretty crap. And but it would have been sort of mid-60s, 70s. So you had the high point of rock and roll lyrics, really. A Whiter Shade of Pale, Strawberry Fields Forever, The Who in particular for me, the Kinks, the Mods,
yes.
The Kinks, The Who, the Small Faces. That was the stuff I listened to. And then, of course, suddenly at the Blue, you get Stax and Motown. And that was fantastic. And I've gone on my, delayed pilgrimage to visit all those places where those records were made, and
me too.
Paid homage to them and their makers.
You have said that, well, I hope you have, because you've also intimated, so I think this is true. People think I'm scruffy. Well, I am. A 7-year-old boy is not going to wash his clothes. He's just not. I am that person.
Yeah.
And I heard that and I went, maybe I've got this theory that who we are as a child, like we're born the way we are, and life sort of takes us away from that original person, the person that we're supposed to be. What did Bob Geldof like to do in his heart and soul when he was a little boy?
Well, you are a blank canvas. You've inherited a bunch of genes that will determine some characteristics, i.e. the way you look, some behaviour, as we now know. But the most of it is cultural or societal and what forms you. So that's Freudian. We know that, always as psychiatrists will go to formative things in your experience. What did I like? It was a function of the conditions of my life, which very early weren't great. I'm not playing a fiddle here. I didn't really think much about it at the time. Retrospectively, I feel sorry for that little boy, but not at the time. It just was what it was. So as you pointed out, no one was going to do the washing. That was because my mum was dead, and my dad, as I said, went away. No fault of his own. He had no choice. There was no economy in Ireland. It was the only job he could get. So it was myself and sisters. The oldest sister was 17. She was not going to be a surrogate mother to her bratish little brother, and she got out quickly. And
so what's the age difference between you and your sisters?
Between my eldest one was about 8 to 10 years, I think. My middle one was 5 or 6 years. She was the school geek. She stayed in school. The nuns gave her food, and so I'd come back to the house and make my own dinner and stuff like that. And it was
what did you
mainly
cook?
I remember it being freezing.
What does a child cook?
Pardon?
What does a child cook?
That's good. Well, whatever was in the cupboard. There was no fridge or TV or telephone because we didn't have money. So what I remember cooking for myself, what I really liked not cooking, but I really liked eating, was rice with an OXO cube dissolved in the water. I sort of worked this out myself, plus a bit of bacon sliced up and put into the water, which gave it a smoky flavour. And then when that was cooked, I'd fry an egg and put it on top of it.
Oh,
so it was kind of egg fried rice,
Yeah, it's sort of a nasi goreng risotto.
Well, not without the peanutty thing, going on in the stuff. So, yeah, I remembered that. And I guess, though, for lunch, there was a scam going on because mothers would never allow their kids to have sugar sandwiches, which is basically uncooked bread and butter pudding, So I would make, sugar sandwiches and, it's bread, butter, sugar. And knowing that the guys, wanted this, I'd make 6 sandwiches for myself every morning before going to school. And
12 pieces of bread?
Yeah. Okay. And I'd swap them then because they all wanted it. So I'd swap one sugar sandwich was worth 1 tomato or 1 egg sandwich. So 2 sandwiches for one ham and thing. So I was the king of sandwiches in school, stuff like that. So yeah, it was all right. I mean, I worked my way. The point is, to your point, at that age, because of this, you become very self-reliant, very independent and very organised, Yeah. So the adjunct to what you said is that I was always scruffy. Yes, but I had a tidy mind. Yeah. And that's the mistake people make, because this shambling oaf wanders into a meeting and he sits there apparently not listening and scratching and looking around and being distracted and doodling non-stop, not looking at anyone. But I'm listening intently. That's what I do unconsciously. And they're going, and in political meetings in particular, but I remember getting the Order of the Nile, second class, from the president of the Sudan, who is, of course, inevitably some cockamamie general who'd taken over the day before, sort of thing. And they were giving me this medal, which is an amazing thing. It's this blaze of gold, silver and ivory and ceramic on my chest. And I walked in. I will not go into these meetings without journalists to make a record, because I don't want to be nailed for being, not saying the right thing or pulling up these leaders on an amnesty report or anything. And so the general walks over to the smartest looking general, or the smartest looking journalist, says, Mr. Geldof, so-and-so, so-and-so, and the journalist just pointed at me, and you could see the guy going, him?
That guy?
I was there in my sneakers and jeans that hadn't been washed and hair all over the place. I'd just come out of the desert, so I was a mess, and he kind of just slapped it on my chest and said, off you go. That sort of thing happens. So it's a useful device when it comes to those sort of things. It's equally useful in rock and roll, There's an idea of Bobby Boomtown, and it's largely true.
It's like your alter ego. Well, I think
the guy on stage is...
Yeah, but Bobby Boomtown and Bob Geldof both deeply do not care what people think of them.
I think that's true. So I'm not bothered by social media. I never, ever look at it. I don't have sites. There are sites saying Bob Geldof, that, but it's nothing to do with me. It just has no interest in me whatsoever. More than that, I don't want to look at anything that I'm in, like, say, the Queen movie, or where there's a version of me, or this musical that's on in the West End about Live Aid called Just for One Day, which I did have to go to, and is absolutely fantastic. But there's a guy doing me, and I had to get over that. And
that must be very weird.
Yeah, well, I was expecting some guy to come on stage and go, should be all right, Bob Geldof, because it's hard to do my dull, monotone, adenoidal South Dublin middle class accent, Is
it overdone? Like, does he shamble on stage like Beetlejuice?
It's not overdone. He hasn't nailed. I mean, the interesting thing about it is that when he was 9 years old, his granny used to make him stand on the kitchen table in Liverpool and do Bob Geldof, which is kind of mad.
Wow.
I mean, he was in Hamilton, and now he's doing this and that. He's big, but he's not bad. And actually, because physically he's not like me, it doesn't matter his attitude. So it's a bit disconcerting, because I'm going, I'm not like that, But when the family go, he's just like you. Shut up, he's nothing like me.
Wow.
So that's kind of now I see him as a character, and it's just, is that character playing well tonight? But in general, I don't, and it goes to your point about being scruffy. It's an easy cartoon to make of someone.
Yeah.
And I I don't like seeing myself. I don't like hearing myself. I will never listen to this. And if I heard you on the radio and me, I just turn it off. I don't like hearing me singing. I just can't stand the stupid things I say. So get so annoyed with myself, so embarrassed by myself.
Wow. I also never listen to myself, but that's because I don't care what I say either.
Yeah.
Do you think that your absolute belief in the way that you live your life and your opinions and the fact that you don't care about what other people think comes from all the time alone you spent as a child? I've listened to...
Again, that's clever, I think, along with the independence and the self-organisation. The downside of this is that because you're on your own, there's no one to temper your rapidly growing ideas and opinions of the world. So you tend to be very dogmatic and see things in black and white. And I don't care what you think, that's what's it I think. And my dad, and we had a tough time. We eventually ended up as mates, thank goodness, and I regret the things that happened, and I regret me being such a prick with him, but equally I regret that he was such a fucking idiot with me. I regret that too late, but we did grow to be good pals, and when he was asked about me, he'd say, I was ashamed of him. I was embarrassed by him, the way he looked. And when I was with my friends, he'd shamble along in these long coats and just grunted people, and his hair was everywhere. And he said the thing that I had to understand very, very early was that Robert, which he still called me, Robert just simply didn't care what I thought about him or what other people thought about him. Now, I'm not sure that's a virtue. In fact, there's a vanity in that, and I dislike that. So
I don't.
Well, I do. I'm careful with leaders, democratic leaders, because they have been, whether you agree with them or not, and whether you agree with their politics, they were elected by by a majority of people, so therefore they do represent those people. And the other people who didn't vote for them have accepted that. So you accept those people's verdict, and you must respect that. And I do. I have to correct myself before I go into this and say it's not this person you disagree with, it's this person who has this position, and he is legitimately there. So if I met Putin, he's illegitimate. He's he's an autocrat. That's power through the military. If Trump gets in, this will go out afterwards, I can't respect that. It's the power of wealth. It's a plutocracy. It's illegitimate. So, but that's me. And, if I did meet that horrendous amoral creep, then I would be very hard put to have a normal conversation with them. In fact, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't bother.
No, you wouldn't. I want to talk about parenting because you enjoy parenting.
Yep.
And for me, parenting has been one of the greatest joys of my life, but for reasons that are unexpected. I didn't really know what to expect, and I love it a lot more than I thought I would. Given that your mother passed away so early and your father was largely absent, how did you know how to be such a beautiful father?
You'd have to ask the girls whether that's true or not.
I think it is. I think it's clear that it is.
Very strange. Last night I was out with friends, and the women were talking about, being mums, and I actually said, "Did you enjoy it?" And their children are all grown up, and boringly we were showing each other, pictures of our kids, but I was showing my latest grandson, who's the cutest thing that ever walked the planet,
How old is he?
And he's 3. And he was a shark last week for Halloween, He was the lamest shark ever. And
was he Baby Shark? Baby Shark?
No, it probably was. He had his outfit anyway. And he went as his little girlfriend. So he was of course a zombie princess, So, I liked the responsibility of it. There's a part of you that always, I don't care who you are, says it's going to be better than what I had. Though I have met people who've had just the most brilliant childhoods, and they seek to replicate that, which is equally fine. But
yeah, how did you not replicate yours?
Because the conditions weren't there. I mean, there were things that happened which seemed to me time looping about itself. So I remembered when my mum died, my dad, the night before my mum, so memory is Proustian, Proust's thing about remembering smells and things like that.
Yeah.
So I pieced together a version of my mother. I think anyone does anyway about memory. So my mother to me is lipstick on a fag butt in the ashtray, lipstick on a teacup, velvet evening gloves up to the elbow, and legs moving up and down on the treadmill of a Singer sewing machine, because I must have been underneath that. And from that you conjure up a sense, though I never needed to, and I have no memory of her, and I don't say, oh my God, that's nothing. It just isn't there. But if you ask me to put together something, it would be that. And so
that's a very sensory account. Is that how your brain works?
No, I mean, no. I remembered the night of it, but only for a specific reason. There were two things happening. My sister was having a midnight feast with her mate who was on a sleepover. I said, can I be in the sleepover, the small annoying brother? And they said, yeah, okay, we'll wake you. So I was allowed to sleep in the other bed in their bedroom. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard them crying, my sister and her mate. And I said, why are you crying? And they said, we're laughing, go back to sleep. And I said, well, has the feast started yet? They said, no, we'll wake you. So I went back to sleep. The next morning, they're not there, but I heard this hubbub in the house, various aunts and uncles, very soft talking and, touching and soft sobbing and that, odd. And then my dad came up and he just sat on the side of the bed, and I remember this, like there was this silence, and he took my hand, and I don't think he knew what to say, but he just said, your mum died last night. And then he started crying, and I'd never seen my father cry, like grown men crying. It just had never occurred to me. And that then made me cry, because I got afraid. Why? I'd never seen this. So, I started crying because that. But it wasn't because of my mum dying, because that's meaningless to that age group. Infinity and that's just means nothing. So that's what happened. And so when the time came to tell my children that their mum had died, I remember that very well. And I had to put down the phone, and I left the room, and I collected myself, and I came back, and they were all in the same room, and I just said, I've got something to tell you that's very serious. And they were small, and and I just said, your mum died last night. Now, it was less of a shock, but it wasn't a shock to me that she was dead. But there was no indication my mum would die. She just had a brain hemorrhage, bang, gone. And she was 40. It was less so around the more contemporary circumstances, because things weren't good. But nonetheless, I just took the lesson from his playbook. Be very direct with children. Don't in any way equivocate. Don't hedge, because they know. And once you're clear, then they can absorb that. They can handle it unto themselves. And if they need help with absorbing it, then you could help to unpick that and unpack it for them and sit with them and do it. Yeah. And so, stuff, as I said, loops around itself. And so that moment came back when it was necessary to return to me.
Yeah. When you're dealing with serious family situations like that, would you recommend easy silence or
whatever's
offers
necessary.
Of questions?
Whatever's necessary. Don't be all hearty and say everything's going to be, just, let it happen. I mean, they will come to you when they need to and if they need to. Just the awareness. You don't have to say, I'm always here for you. It's a given.
Yes.
I mean, if you're a parent, that's the job. And I don't like people, this is not what we're here for, but I just don't like people being bad. I don't understand it. It's possible to have your jobs. It's possible to do that. To do whatever you like in your life. But also the primary function of being grown up, of being a grown up, exactly what those words are. The primary function of the species is to raise the young to be able to live a proper life and fulfill whatever possibilities they have in that little brain.
To that point, do you think sometimes a rough childhood or discomfort in childhood is a good thing?
No, I'm not convinced by that. It messes you up. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not, there's deep anger in me, and my animus is rage. My response to something that I think is unfair is rage. I temper it because I'm old. But when the band started, the Rats, that howl of anger, that is our early music, which powered us up the charts because that's what people felt. They were disenfranchised. Britain had 27% inflation when we arrived in England. 27%. I mean, what? Everything you buy is 27% more expensive. Therefore, your wage is 27% less.
Yeah.
That's not possible to live.
And a lot of people couldn't afford it when it was 27% less at that time as well.
Absolutely, they couldn't. So, where's the future? What's the future for the young? Ireland had a zero economy, viz. My father, and so when we came of age, there was nothing for us. That's a form of treason by a government when they cannot give their young a future. And, New York was bankrupt. New York, the great city, had declared bankruptcy. So it's not a mistake that out of New York you get the Ramones, out of Ireland you get the Boomtown Rats, out of the UK you get the Clash and the Sex Pistols, and we all meet at this fulcrum of anger and demand change. That's the purpose of rock and roll in my time. And, all of us had the same thing. This is crap. The first thing you heard Johnny Rotten say was, I'm the Antichrist, I'm an anarchist, there is no future in England's dreaming. That's brilliant. Joe Strummer of The Clash, I want a riot of my own. Bob Geldof, the first thing you heard him say was, the world owes me a living. I don't want to be like you, I'm going to be like me. And so this blast, so it found itself at the right moment, at the right time, expressed through this really good band. And I was lucky, but it's still the thing. And where I will agree with you, if you've had bad luck when you were a kid in your upbringing, then I think you recognise, you're very alert to it happening around you. You're very alert to people on the street. You're very alert to what the news is telling you, because pathetically you associate your own conditions with that, and that would be conditions of it's not right, it's injustice. And, we had no money, and it's crap. Poverty is crap. Greed is not good. Greed is stupid. And so all of those things that you imbibe, but you're not aware they're informing you. You just get on with your life in the best possible way you can. I just got into a rock and roll band at a period when rock and roll was the lingua franca of the planet, the common language. It wasn't English, it was pop music. And everyone could understand pop music, and so it seemed logical to me to talk to the world in this common language through through this new medium of satellites, about a common problem of 32 million people dying unnecessarily of hunger.
Do you believe that the timing of the Boomtown Rats was perfect because you learnt to express your anger, be the voice of a whole generation of furious people?
It's luck, timing and talent. But rock and roll and technology go hand in hand. You can't get Elvis and Little Richard unless you have the transistor. And the transistor was the means to the glue of the Pax Americana. American troops were all over the world. How did they stick together? Through the transistor, this new thing. And what was the music that first utilised that? Elvis and Little Richard, who weren't allowed into the American dream because they were on the wrong side of the tracks. But, you know, Elvis, young, beautiful, force of nature, you know, brilliant understanding of, you know, his time. Little Richard, young, black, gay, beautiful. He was never going to get on telly. But here they come. The Beatles were the function of television. Britain gets TV for the first time, and here are these working class boys who don't even understand the word deference. So when they meet monarchies and prime ministers, they're just laughing. You know, they don't understand that your hair has to be this way. Oh, well, we want it this way, you know, and they laugh the whole time. Or the Rolling Stones, contemptuous insolence. They'd sort of wander on stage picking their noses, no concession to show business at all, you know, and so you go forward and, you know, you get the punk thing with satellites and stuff like that, and then you get the death of rock and roll with the internet and the web.
Bob Geldof, we're being wrapped up, but I could talk to you forever. Thank you so much for your time today. If you want to see Bob Geldof, and why wouldn't you, enjoy an evening with Sir Bob Geldof, hit up Teg.
I've changed the name.
Oh, what is it?
I'm decided to call it Life WTF.
I love it. Go see Life WTF with Bob Geldof. Hit up tegdainty.com. Thank you again. And thank you for being first person that at the age of 11 years old I was watching Live Aid. It was the hugest thing in Australia. It was the hugest thing in the world, but in Australia, you know, we were so far away from everything, and there was this
so connected
magical explosion of kindness and care, and it made me feel so understood that you made kindness cool, because sometimes kindness is like, oh, why would you do that? And you were this amazing, inspirational, strong,
scruffy,
a little bit fucked off guy going, this is not good enough, and look what I made. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thanks.